Look at how God is talking about Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, is called by God as his servant who will execute the judgment upon the southern kingdom, the kingdom of Judah, and the nations last minute. God is offering a solution to the people of Judah who want to listen to his word. If you want to live, God is saying, go out of the city and surrender yourself to the Babylonians. If you continue to stay within the city and resist the Babylonians, you would ultimately be destroyed by sword or plague or by the destruction that the Babylonians are gonna bring on this after land. All these experiences, you would expect the people of God to have learned their lesson and to submit to the will of God and escape exile from the southern kingdom, the land of Judah. But guess what? These people have not learned their lesson. Is, how does King Nebuchadnezzar know about Jeremiah? And my second question is, why does King Nebuchadnezzar want to save and protect Jeremiah? Hello everyone, we are continuing with our series titled God and Pagan Kings. And in this video, we are going to focus our attention on King Nebuchadnezzar as he is found in the book of Jeremiah. In the previous video, we were looking at Nebuchadnezzar in the book of Daniel. In this video, it's Nebuchadnezzar in the book of Jeremiah. The name of Nebuchadnezzar appears around 35 times in the book of Jeremiah, from which we understand that he is a very important individual in the lifetime of Jeremiah. What we're going to discuss today is divided into three sections. Section 1 is looking at the historical background to the prophecies of Jeremiah. When exactly did Jeremiah make these prophecies, in what context, to whom, and so on. Section 2 is going to focus on the specific prophecies that Jeremiah made about King Nebuchadnezzar. In this book, there are several prophecies that Jeremiah makes about Nebuchadnezzar, but we are going to narrow down our attention to 4 of them. And in section 3, we're going to look at Nebuchadnezzar's response to Jeremiah's prophecies. I'm going to show to you from scripture that Nebuchadnezzar was aware of the fact that Jeremiah prophesied about him, and therefore it changed his heart towards Jeremiah, and we will look at that in the final section. So let's begin with the first section, where we are going to talk about the historical background to the prophecies of Jeremiah. I want us to take a look at this map, where we have the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. After the time of Solomon, the kingdom of Israel got split into two. You have the northern kingdom, which is called as Israel, and you have the southern kingdom, which is called as Judah. The northern kingdom is comprised of 10 tribes, and the southern kingdom is comprised of 2 tribes. The capital of the northern kingdom is in Samaria, and the capital of the southern kingdom is in Jerusalem. Now, if you look through the history of the northern kingdom, the kings that ruled the northern kingdom, not one of them is a good king according to the Bible. And therefore, the judgment that came upon the northern kingdom was quicker. Around 722 or 721 BC, the Assyrian Empire attacked the northern kingdom, destroyed them, and carried the people of the northern kingdom into exile, 722 or 721 BC. And so the northern kingdom is gone, only the southern kingdom continues to exist, because there were a few good kings ruling the kingdom, and therefore they often tried to bring the attention of the people back to God. And therefore, the southern kingdom continued to exist for another 150 years or so. Now, I want us to pay attention to this chart, and I have shown the names of King Jehoiakim, King Jehoiakim, and King Zedekiah in the first column. Now, Jeremiah has prophesied to all these 3 kings. Jeremiah has prophesied before King Jehoiakim, and Jeremiah has prophesied after King Zedekiah, but we are interested in the prophecies that Jeremiah makes to these three kings. By the way, these three kings are the last three kings of the southern kingdom. Now, during King Jehoiakim's reign in 605 BC, Nebuchadnezzar makes his first attack on the southern kingdom. 605 BC, during the time of King Jehoiakim. But before this attack is made, Jeremiah makes a prophecy to King Jehoiakim in Jeremiah chapter 25, which we are going to read in section 2. Now, after this attack, we are told in Daniel chapter 1, verses 1 through 3, Nebuchadnezzar took many articles from the temple in Jerusalem and put them in his temple in Babylon. Daniel and some others were also taken into exile. So this is Nebuchadnezzar's first battle against the southern kingdom or Judah. King Jehoiachin, the second king in our chart here, ruled for only 3 months during 597. Nebuchadnezzar placed his second attack on the kingdom of Judah in 597 BC, and he destroyed them this time as well. And before Nebuchadnezzar's attack on King Jehoiachin, we find Jeremiah's prophecy about King Nebuchadnezzar to King Jehoiachin in Jeremiah chapter 22, which we would be reading. And during this time in 2 Kings, we are told that Nebuchadnezzar took away treasures of the temple, exiled around 7,000 fighting men from Jerusalem, exiled around 1,000 skilled workers and artisans and other prominent men from Jerusalem. Totally about 10,000 people were taken into exile during this period. King Jehoiachin himself was taken into exile, and Ezekiel was also probably taken into exile during this time. And then we come to King Zedekiah, who is the last king of the southern kingdom. Nebuchadnezzar launches his third attack against the southern kingdom during the reign of King Zedekiah. Finally, the battle is won by the Babylonians in 586 BC. King Zedekiah is king for almost 9 years, and Jeremiah talks to King Zedekiah on multiple occasions, but we are interested in a prophecy that Jeremiah gives to King Zedekiah early in his reign and also during the time when Jerusalem was besieged by King Nebuchadnezzar. Now, we are told in the Bible, 2 Kings chapter 25, that Nebuchadnezzar besieged Jerusalem for 2 years. There was an extreme famine within Jerusalem. Judah's army tried to escape, but they were caught. Zedekiah's sons were killed. Zedekiah's eyes were put out. The temple was burnt down. The royal palace and all the houses in Jerusalem were burned to the ground, and a lot of people were exiled towards Babylon. And thus the southern kingdom also ceases to exist as a kingdom in 586 BC. Now, all this is the historical background to the prophecies of Jeremiah that we are going to look at. This brings us to section 2, where we are going to look at the prophecies of Jeremiah to the 3 kings that we mentioned about Nebuchadnezzar. The first passage comes to us from Jeremiah chapter 25, and I'm going to read from verses 1 through 11. Jeremiah 25. The word came to Jeremiah concerning all the people of Judah in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, son of Josiah, king of Judah, which was the 1st year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. So Nebuchadnezzar has just become the king of Babylon. This is his 1st year of his rule, and Jeremiah is talking to Jehoiakim about this king called Nebuchadnezzar. Jeremiah the prophet said to all the people of Judah and to all those living in Jerusalem, for 23 years from the 13th year of Josiah son of Ammon king of Judah until this very day, the word of the Lord has come to me, and I have spoken to you again and again, but you have not listened. So Jeremiah is starting his speech by saying that I have been a prophet among you for the last 23 years, and I have been speaking the word of the Lord to you again and again. And though the Lord has sent all his servants, the prophets, to you again and again, you have not listened or paid any attention. They said, turn now, each of you, from your evil ways and your evil practices, and you can stay in the land the Lord gave to you and your ancestors forever and ever. Do not follow other gods to serve and worship them. Do not arouse my anger with what your hands have made. Then I will not harm you. So in verses 4 through 6, Jeremiah is telling the people of God, even before I came, God has been sending his servants, the prophets, to speak to you about the sins that you are committing. God has been telling you again and again over the last many generations that you need to turn from your evil ways and turn towards God. You need to turn away from idolatry and turn towards God. If you do so, then the punishment will not come upon you. Verse 7, but you did not listen to me, declares the Lord, and you have aroused my anger with what your hands have made, and you have brought harm to yourselves. Therefore, the Lord Almighty says this, because you have not listened to my words, I will summon all the peoples of the north, and my servant Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, declares the Lord, and I will bring them against this land and its inhabitants and against all the surrounding nations. I will completely destroy them and make them an object of horror and scorn and everlasting ruin. Look at how God is talking about Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, is called by God as his servant, who will execute the judgment upon the southern kingdom, the kingdom of Judah, and the nations around them. And God says that I'm going to bring him, and through him I'm going to execute the judgment upon you people. Verses 10 and 11. I will banish from them the sounds of joy and gladness, the voices of bride and bridegroom, the sound of millstones and the light of the lamp. In other words, all joy will be gone, all work will be gone, no lamps will be lit in this country. Verse 11, the whole country will become a desolate wasteland, and these nations will serve the king of Babylon 70 years. You see, Nebuchadnezzar has just come upon the throne. This is the first year of his reign, and Jeremiah is speaking to King Jehoiakim, and he is saying that Nebuchadnezzar is going to come, he's going to attack, he's going to destroy, and a lot of things are going to take place, and the Babylonians would be in power for 70 years, is what Jeremiah is saying here. So look at how before Nebuchadnezzar's first attack against the southern kingdom in 605 BC, during the time of King Jehoiakim, Jeremiah is warning King Jehoiakim about what is going to come. So Jeremiah's first prophecy about King Nebuchadnezzar for our purposes in this video. Now we turn our attention to Jeremiah chapter 22. And this is Jeremiah's prophecy to King Jehoiachin. If you remember, King Jehoiachin is king for only 3 months, and King Nebuchadnezzar is going to make his second attack against the southern kingdom during the time of King Jehoiachin in 597 BC. But before that attack happens, Jeremiah prophesies to King Jehoiachin in Jeremiah 22, 24 to 27. Look at what God says. As surely as I live, declares the Lord, even if you, Jehoiachin, son of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, were a signet ring on my right hand, I would still pull you off. I will deliver you into the hands of those who want to kill you, those you fear, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and the Babylonians. I will hurl you and the mother who gave you birth into another country where neither of you was born, and there you both will die. You will never come back to the land you long to return to. So God is speaking to King Jehoiachin, who was going to be king for only 3 months. He says, I'm going to deliver you. So this is an act of God. He is going to deliver King Jehoiachin into the hands of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and the Babylonians. God also says that you and your mother who gave birth to you will be exiled into another country where neither of you were born, and there both of you would die. You would long to come back to this land, but that will not happen. If you read the narrative in 2 Kings, you would recognize that it was not just Jehoiachin who was taken into exile. His mother was also taken into exile, and both of them die their deaths in that foreign land. And also a lot of people are being taken into exile. 7,000 fighting men, 1,000 skilled workers and artisans and prominent people from the city of Jerusalem, including the king and probably prophet Ezekiel, was also taken into exile during this time period. So here we have the second passage where Jeremiah is speaking about King Nebuchadnezzar and what is going to happen during the time of King Jehoiachin. Now we come to the final 2 passages. This is spoken during the time of King Zedekiah, who is the last king of the southern kingdom. And the first passage comes to us from Jeremiah chapter 27. And we are going to read from verses 1 through 13. And as soon as we read it, we would understand that this is being spoken very early in Zedekiah's reign. Chapter 27, 1 through 13. Early in the reign of Zedekiah, son of Josiah, king of Judah, this word came to Jeremiah from the Lord. This is what the Lord said to me: make a yoke out of straps and crossbars and put it on your neck. God is asking Jeremiah to make a crossbar, something that is laid on the oxen with straps and crossbars, and put it on your neck as a picture of the message that you are going to give. And by the way, at this point, as I'm going to point out now to you, there are envoys who have come from several neighboring nations to Jerusalem to discuss how these kingdoms can together stand against Babylon. There are envoys or ambassadors from the kingdom of Edom, from Moab, from Ammon, from Tyre, and from Sidon. So ambassadors from 5 places are in Jerusalem together discussing with King Zedekiah on how to face the Babylonian king called Nebuchadnezzar. So, verse 3, then send word to the kings of Edom, Moab, Ammon, Tyre, and Sidon through the envoys who have come to Jerusalem to Zedekiah, king of Judah. Give them a message for their masters and say, this is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel says, tell this to your masters. With my great power and outstretched arm, I made the earth and its people and the animals that are on it, and I give it to anyone I please. Now I will give all your countries into the hands of my servant Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. I will make even the wild animals subject to him. All nations will serve him and his son and his grandson until the time for his land comes. Then many nations and great kings will subjugate him. What is going on here? God is telling Jeremiah to go to Jerusalem, and with this picture of that crossbar on his neck, he is to talk to the ambassadors that have come from these 5 countries, and he is to tell them that God is on the throne. By the way, our series is titled God and Pagan Kings. And in this passage, God is speaking not just about Nebuchadnezzar, God is speaking to 5 different countries that are around the people of God, the southern kingdom. And this is what God says, that all the earth, all the people, all the animals that are on it are mine. And now I'm going to give all your countries into the hands of my servant, Nebuchadnezzar. God calls Nebuchadnezzar his servant for the second time in the passages that we have read today. All nations will serve him and his son and his grandson, and then the time for his land will come, and some other kings and some other lands will subdue them, and they will. So God knows the extent to which the Babylonian Empire will last, the number of years, and the people who would be seated on the throne. And God also knows who is going to displace them. And God is revealing all of this, not just to King Zedekiah, but also to the ambassadors and the people of the 5 countries that are being represented there. Verse 8 onwards. If, however, any nation or kingdom will not serve Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, or bow its neck under his yoke, I will punish that nation with the sword, famine, and plague, declares the Lord, until I destroy it by his hand. So God is saying, you have come together to discuss how you can stand against King Nebuchadnezzar. But my advice to you, God is saying, is submit to King Nebuchadnezzar, because that is my plan. But if you do not do that, you would be destroyed by the sword, the famine, and the plague, and I myself will destroy you guys. Verse 9 following. So do not listen to your prophets, your diviners, your interpreters of dreams, your mediums, or your sorcerers who tell you you will not serve the king of Babylon. They prophesy lies to you that will only serve to remove you far from your lands. I will banish you and you will perish. But if any nation will bow its neck under the yoke of the king of Babylon and serve him, I will let that nation remain in its own land to till it and to live there, declares the Lord. In other words, don't resist King Nebuchadnezzar. I'm giving him authority and power and dominion over your lands. If you submit to him, you will not be exiled. You will get to stay back in your land, and you can continue to be in your land. Verse 12 and 13. I gave the same message to Zedekiah, king of Judah. I said, Jeremiah said, bow your neck under the yoke of the king of Babylon, serve him and his people, and you will live. Why will you and your people die by the sword, famine, and plague, with which the Lord has threatened any nation that will not serve the king of Babylon? So God is speaking very, very clearly through Jeremiah to King Zedekiah very early in his reign that Nebuchadnezzar is going to come in a few years, and he is going to conquer this land, because that is how God ordained it. Do not resist him. If you do not resist him, you will get to continue to stay in the land. Otherwise, you would be destroyed by the sword, the famine, and the plague. And why do you want yourselves to get killed, is what Jeremiah is asking King Zedekiah in this passage. We have one more passage that we would like to read. This is Jeremiah speaking to the same king, that is King Zedekiah, but this is towards the end of his reign. And this is the time when Jerusalem is besieged by King Nebuchadnezzar. Chapter 21 of the book of Jeremiah, verses 1 through 10. The word came to Jeremiah from the Lord when King Zedekiah sent to him Pashur, son of Malchiah, and the priest Zephaniah, son of Messiah. They said, inquire now of the Lord for us, because Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, is attacking us. Perhaps the Lord will perform wonders for us as in times past, so that he will withdraw from us. The king Zedekiah has sent 2 people to Jeremiah and saying, please inquire of the Lord for us. They have disobeyed the command of the Lord that came through Jeremiah to King Zedekiah, and they're resisting the Babylonians, and now they want to know what the Lord is saying about King Nebuchadnezzar. And they are hoping that God will perform some miracle like God has performed in the past. For example, during the time of King Hezekiah, God was able to send an angel to kill 185,000 of the people that were besieging Jerusalem. Perhaps God will perform similar miracles, is what they are trying to say. Verse 3, but Jeremiah answered them, tell Zedekiah, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel says, I am about to turn against you the weapons of war that are in your hands, which you are using to fight the king of Babylon and the Babylonians who are outside the wall besieging you. And I will gather them inside the city. In other words, Zedekiah, don't continue to resist them. The weapons that you have gathered together to fight against the Babylonians would be used to fight against you. The Babylonians are going to come inside the city. Verse 5, I myself will fight against you with an outstretched hand and a mighty arm in furious anger and in great wrath. God is saying that I myself am going to fight against you, O Zedekiah, O people of Judah. I will strike down those who live in the city, both man and beast, and they will die of a terrible plague. After that, declares the Lord, I will give Zedekiah, king of Judah, his officials and the people in the city who survived the plague, sword, and famine into the hands of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and to their enemies who want to kill them. He will put them to the sword. He will show them no mercy or pity or compassion. Verse 8 onwards, Jeremiah is providing them a solution to the problem. He says, furthermore, tell the people, this is what the Lord says. See, I am setting before you the way of life and the way of death. Whoever stays in the city will die by the sword, famine, or plague. But whoever goes out and surrenders to the Babylonians who are besieging you will live. They will escape with their lives. I have determined to do the city harm and not good, declares the Lord. It will be given into the hands of the king of Babylon, and he will destroy it with fire. In other words, in this last minute, God is offering a solution to the people of Judah who want to listen to his word. If you want to live, God is saying, go out of the city and surrender yourself to the Babylonians. If you continue to stay within the city and resist the Babylonians, you would ultimately be destroyed by sword or plague or by the destruction that the Babylonians are gonna bring on this land. After all these experiences, you would expect the people of God to have learned their lesson and to submit to the will of God and escape exile from the southern kingdom, the land of Judah. But guess what? These people have not learned their lesson. Jeremiah prophesied to King Jehoiakim about King Nebuchadnezzar coming. They did not listen. King Nebuchadnezzar came, attacked, and defeated them. Then Jeremiah prophesied during the time of King Jehoiachin that Nebuchadnezzar is coming. Nebuchadnezzar came, attacked, destroyed them, took a lot of people into exile. At least this time, Zedekiah was told during the early part of his reign, he had years to prepare for it, but did not listen to Jeremiah. In the last days of their siege, Jeremiah is giving them a way out of this problem. You will not be exiled. You will be allowed to stay in the land if you surrender yourself to the Babylonians. But the people of God are resisting the prophet of God, the word of the Lord, and thus they are defeated in 586 BC. The temple is burnt down, the royal palace is burnt down, the houses of the people in Jerusalem are burnt down, most of the people are exiled from the land. Zedekiah's sons are killed before his eyes, and then his eyes are put out. In other words, all through his life, he would then remember the last thing that he has seen, which is that his sons have been killed. And thus we come to the sad ending of the southern kingdom and also the ending of section 2. And this brings us to section 3, which is Nebuchadnezzar's response to Jeremiah's prophecies. Now, it is interesting to me that Jeremiah knew about the prophecies that were made about him. And you might wonder, how do you know that the king knew about these prophecies? Please listen to Jeremiah chapter 39, verses 11 and 12. When Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had given these orders about Jeremiah through Nebuzaradan, commander of the imperial guard, take him and look after him. Don't harm him, but do for him whatever he asks. See, King Nebuchadnezzar is a very cruel man. He does not really care for anybody. He is coming into not just Judah, but all the neighboring kingdoms. He's killing people left and right. He's displacing people. He's exiling them. But about Jeremiah, he says, to the commander of the imperial guard, Nebuzaradan, he says, take Jeremiah and look after him. Don't harm him, but do for him whatever he asks. My first question is, how does King Nebuchadnezzar know about Jeremiah? And my second question is, why does King Nebuchadnezzar want to save and protect Jeremiah? And my response to my own questions are that King Nebuchadnezzar has somehow heard about Jeremiah. Probably he has heard from the people of the other kingdoms because Jeremiah has spoken to the ambassadors from these kingdoms, or probably he has heard them from the Jews themselves. We do not know. Whichever way, he has heard about Jeremiah, and he knows that Jeremiah has spoken about him several times, and therefore he wants to protect Jeremiah. But before the commander could protect him, we are told that the army of Babylon binds Jeremiah in chains. I want us to pay attention to a few more verses. This is Jeremiah chapter 40, verses 1 through 6. The word came to Jeremiah from the Lord after Nebuzaradan, commander of the imperial guard, had released him at Ramah. He had found Jeremiah bound in chains among all the captives from Jerusalem and Judah who were being carried into exile to Babylon. So I'm assuming that the imperial guard was searching for Jeremiah but could not find Jeremiah. But then later found Jeremiah bound and in chains along with all the captives of Jerusalem and Judah that were being carried on their way to Babylon. I'm assuming that this guy went around calling the name Jeremiah, and ultimately somebody pointed out Jeremiah to him, and finally he found Jeremiah. Now listen to what he says to Jeremiah. When the commander of the guard found Jeremiah, he said to him, "The Lord your God decreed this disaster for this place, and now the Lord has brought it about. He has done just as he said he would. All this happened because you people sinned against the Lord and did not obey him." Look at what Nebuzaradan is telling Jeremiah. He is telling Jeremiah the things that Jeremiah was telling the people of God all through these years, that God is going to punish them and God is going to use Nebuchadnezzar and all of that. And Nebuzaradan, the commander, knows these things and he is telling them to Jeremiah. How did he know? I believe King Nebuchadnezzar shared this with him. And how does King Nebuchadnezzar know? He must have heard about Jeremiah. Verse 4, "But today I am freeing you from the chains on your wrists. Come with me to Babylon if you like, and I will look after you. But if you do not want to, then don't come. Look, the whole country lies before you. Go wherever you please." However, before Jeremiah turned to go, Nebuzaradan added, "Go back to Gedaliah, son of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, whom the king of Babylon has appointed over the towns of Judah, and live with him among the people, or go anywhere else you please." Then the commander gave him provisions and a present and let him go. So the commander is telling Jeremiah, if you want to come to Babylon with us, you're free to come. If you want to stay in this land, you're free to do so. And when Jeremiah was about to turn away and go, he tells Jeremiah that Gedaliah has been appointed as the governor over these places by King Nebuchadnezzar. You can go and stay with him. Your needs would be taken care of. And so Jeremiah does exactly that. The commander gave him provisions, may have given him some food, some clothing, some money, and a present. and let him go. Look at how Jeremiah is treated with great respect by King Nebuchadnezzar and his army commander. Why do they do so? Because they have seen the word of the Lord that was being spoken by Jeremiah being fulfilled before their own eyes. The people of God refused to see what was being told to them, refused to believe in or submit to what was being told to them. But here is a pagan king and a pagan army commander who have paid attention to and are ready to honor the man of God. So you see, King Nebuchadnezzar has many encounters with the true and the living God. In this video, we were discussing the encounters that he had in the book of Jeremiah. But in the previous video, we discussed about the encounters that he had in the book of Daniel. And again, God is very, very clearly speaking to a pagan king. I believe God is doing this out of his kindness toward Nebuchadnezzar, out of his mercy and grace towards him. And God is revealing himself, somehow hoping that he would turn towards the Lord. God and pagan kings. God revealing himself to pagan kings. With this, we bring to an end this particular video of ours. We will continue our series with some other pagan kings and how God has revealed about them or God has spoken about them and things like that. Until then, God bless all of us.